So welcome everybody. I'm Pearl Winchester. I'm co-animating the community of Oceania Geospatial Water Resource with Nicolas, but Nicolas is excused for today. Actually, he's on a field trip in the ocean, so it's not working with being online today. So I'm originally from New Caledonia. I'm a tropical island water specialist. I've been working as an IT engineer and GIS engineer for the water department of the government of New Caledonia for 15 years. And it's been 2 years now that I've been back in France to finish my studies for a global executive master's in HEC in Paris, which is a business school for leadership for sustainability. You can reach me on LinkedIn. I can share my profile. You have the information from Nick, which is based in Fiji, working for the Pacific Community, Commission du Pacifique Sud. And Nick has an hydrology background. So yeah, please introduce yourself in the chat. Today, I'm very happy because we have two ladies with us. And I will go back to this later. So I will leave a few minutes to Marine and to Lauren to introduce themselves, and then I'll get the floor back. Marine, please.
Thank you, Pearl, and good morning, everyone. My name is Marine. I manage a small social environmental consulting office in New Caledonia. My background is in environmental science and terrestrial ecology, so especially on forest ecosystems. I am not at all a GIS specialist, but I use GIS as a tool very often, and I have been professionally involved in various ways with ecological restoration and conservation of forests in New Caledonia. Including the implementation of nature-based solutions for disaster risk reduction and water resources management, and for the development of ecosystem-based adaptation to climate change in New Caledonia.
Thank you, Marine.
Lauren.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Aloha. I'm actually calling in from Hawaii today. My name is Lauren Rothbenu. I am both the founder of a startup called 3R Water, which you'll learn a little bit about today, as well as I have had a design consultancy firm here in Honolulu for the past 17 years. My background has really been in water resource management, specifically in the field of what's called integrated water resource management. So specialize in green stormwater infrastructure, as well as on-site wastewater and gray water treatment and reuse. I've done a lot with climate resiliency planning here locally in the state. Yeah, I'm here really to talk about a lot of way we're bridging the gap between having the public gain more access to these types of solutions on a broader scale for climate adaptation.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Marine. Just a quick background on the community of Oceania Geospatial Water Resource Workgroup. So we created the workgroup last year, and it was linked to a seminar we had in 2022, where we knew that we had to put people in network. So the idea of this workgroup is to get people from every country of the Pacific Islands that are interested in water resources and in GIS, geospatial, and any kind of geospatial data, and around water, of course. And so the topics that we are dealing with or sharing are written on the right, but it's definitely not exhaustive, because as today we are talking about nature-based solutions for water management, it's not written here, but it's around water resources, so it's all good. You can join us on LinkedIn. I will share the link a bit later in the chat. It's a way for us to interact between our webinars or our events. If you have any questions, you can type them in the chat for now. And we are about to start with a first interaction. I don't know if you can see the QR code. I hope it's working. And so if you connect with the QR code, and I'm going to do it straight away, you will reach a survey that you can do online. And it's it's a survey for Marine. We will leave this survey open all the time. Marine is doing a speech, so you will be able to interact through the survey during Marine's presentation. And I am now leaving the floor to Marine, so I'm going to stop sharing. I hope it's good for everybody to get the QR code. I'm going to put the link in the chat in the meantime, and I'm going to leave the floor to Marine up and stop sharing my screen. Marine, the floor is yours.
Okay, let me share my screen. Hopefully it works. Okay, is it working for everyone?
It is working, thank you.
Okay. So I already introduced myself, so I'll just start straight away. Oh, is it working? Okay.
Marine, sorry to interrupt you, just to make sure you're not in presentation mode, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
we can see the one with the menu on the left.
Is it working now?
It's working now, thanks.
Okay, cool. Good. So yeah, many risks that can lead to what we call natural disasters are related to water. And when water systems are disturbed or degraded, this can seriously affect human health, food production, economy, well-being, and many other things. So the sustainable management of water resources actually implies to take into account some ecological functions of terrestrial ecosystems and other ecosystems that have an influence on water quality and water availability, especially by ways in which vegetation affect soil structure or control erosion, affect microclimate, and so on. So this is just a little introduction to make sure everyone understands what nature-based solutions actually mean. They consist in managing or restoring ecosystems to take advantage of these ecological functions so that they can provide us with these important services. So I have listed on the picture a few examples of nature-based solutions related to water. And in order to decide where we should implement these solutions, we need to find out where they are the most needed, so where communities are the most vulnerable, and also where they would be more efficient, so which sites would be the most suitable. So before I dive into examples of how I have used GIS in this decision process, I have written this question just down there, and that's the question that's on the Mentimeter that Pearl has shared on the chat. So if you click on the link, you will be able to share your suggestions. So I just wanted to say, feel free to add as many criteria as you think are relevant, and then we will go back to that at the end. So the first case study I wanted to share with you, it's part of a regional project that's called PBAC Plus. That means Pacific Ecosystem-Based Adaptation to Climate Change Plus, because it's a follow-on of the project PBAC. The project is funded by the COG-WR initiative with additional funds from the French Fund for the Global Environment. It's led and implemented by SPREP in 5 Pacific islands, including New Caledonia. And for Payback Plus, I work with 2 partners to run an ecosystem and socioeconomic resilience analysis and mapping, ISRAM in short, in New Caledonia. One of the objectives is to map resilience across the territory to identify vulnerable areas where nature-based solutions should be targeted. And GIS was used as a decision support in a participatory process that also included the study of ecosystem services and socioeconomic relationships, social and governance vulnerabilities, adaptation needs, ecosystem restoration opportunities, and capacity building on nature-based solutions. So to analyze the geographical distribution of socioeconomic and ecological resilience in New Caledonia, we used a standardized method for vulnerability assessment that relies on IPCC definitions and principles. So the resilience of a system can be measured by assessing its exposure, sensitivity, and its adaptive capacity to various pressures, including climate hazards and other threats, which could be invasive species, for example, or some human activities. And I have put on the right the process that we followed for to assess the resilience of each type of ecosystem and each socioeconomic sector. So it's the same process for each of them. First, we identify 3 sets of relevant indicators. So one set of indicators for each component: exposure, sensitivity, and adaptive capacity. Then we collected and processed geographic data to give the indicators values for each geographic unit. So in our case, we used municipality as a geographic unit. The indicators values were normalized, so they were categorized into comparable scores, 1, 2, 3, or 4, from very bad to very good, by applying some threshold to each indicator. And we also assigned weights to the indicators based on their relative importance. And then we aggregated weighted indicator scores into a single score for each component. And finally, we aggregated the 3 component scores into a resilience score. So this is an example of the kind of maps that we were able to produce from this analysis. On the left, I have mapped forest ecosystems' levels of exposure to various threats, their level of sensitivity, and their level of adaptive capacity for each municipality in New Caledonia. And the final result is the forest ecosystems resilience map. So municipalities where forests are the most vulnerable appear in red, which means that to enhance ecosystem services provided by forest, including related to water management, it seems like it would be beneficial to engage forest restoration or threats management, especially in these municipalities. So the map alone is not enough. Of course, it should be compared to other ecosystems and socioeconomic resilience maps as well. It's a set of a decision support, but it's good information already. So that's it for the large scale example. The second case study I wanted to talk about focuses on local scale site selection. So in the municipality of Wailu, that's the red one right in the middle in this map. A few years ago, there were a very bad weather event which led to deadly landslides and floods with huge damage in the town. And in the area, human activities, invasive herbivores, and recurring bushfires were causing severe soil erosion and filling and sedimentation of rivers. So the municipality of Wailu designed and implemented reprise project. This means restoration of ecosystems for the prevention of risks and for ecosystem services. And I was in charge of leading the project. So local communities were very much involved in the governance and in developing nature-based solution strategies, and of course, in their implementation. We had some operational targets, such as, I didn't write them, restoring 30 hectares of forest, controlling invasive deer on 5,000 hectares, and things like that. So I ran a multi-criteria analysis to identify which sites within the project area would be best suited to distribute these efforts. So here's the method again. First, I facilitated a workshop with stakeholders to present the list of available data layers that might be relevant selection criteria. And so the stakeholders excluded the data layers that shouldn't be taken into account. And based on the list of relevant data layers, so the remaining data layers that we decided to keep, we used exclusion criteria to remove unsuitable areas, which allowed us to reduce the overall project area. Then we assigned values thresholds to each criteria. So we gave ranking and weights to all of these remaining criteria. So you can see some examples on the right, on the right in the table. So for example, it was decided that forest restoration would not be feasible too far from access roads. So we assigned a higher weight to all areas that were less than 1 kilometer away from roads, a medium weight from 1 to 2 kilometers, and a lower weight over 2 kilometers. So that's all different weights within one single layer. And then for this layer, for this criteria, it accounted for 15% in the overall analysis. And we did that for each criteria. So on the GIS working file, I created a grid over the updated project area, and I applied the multi-criteria analysis to the grid. And on the right, the small maps show some of the layers that were included in the analysis, and the results of this analysis was rasterized. And so that's the map on the left, from least suitable in pale yellow to most suitable cells in red, according to our criteria. And then this map was showed to customary leaders. So they used this information to decide where restoration efforts would be made. And so that's the map in the middle. You can see where sites were selected. And some of the sites that were selected were very suitable according to the analysis. That's the case for that one on the bottom. You can see the cells were very much red where the site was selected, but that's not the case for all of them. So, well, these two case studies show how GIS can be used to prioritize where nature-based solutions should be implemented. There are some differences related to the scales and specific objectives, but overall, I think they are quite similar in their approaches. So I just wanted to share some of their common benefits and some of their limits. As benefits, I would like to say that they can and they must be part of an inclusive process. Maps provide good decision support, so that's the way I think they should be used. These analyses can be very much adapted in their scales and resolution. The models can be updated anytime as more data become available or as objectives change. So keep your working file updated and keep using it as time goes by. And as limits, I think the most important limit is that these analyses are only representative of the indicators that have been included. So it will never be a perfect picture of reality. Something will always be missing. And actually, data availability or quality is a big challenge, usually. So these models are just no better than the data that they are fed with. It's good to be to keep that in mind, especially when showing your results to stakeholders. And so just to end off with some tips and best practices, before all, I would recommend to be very clear and honest when presenting your analysis results about the limits I just mentioned. Also, even if it's tempting, don't include every data layer you have. Some of them may not be relevant to your objective. So even if you don't have many layers, just adding one more that has nothing to do with your analysis won't make it better. Also, allocate plenty of time for data collation. Really, it will never be enough. So really take the time that's needed, if possible, to gather the data that you need, or eventually do a survey or something to create the data. Sometimes you will need to compromise with data quality, but looking for alternatives is better than having no data at all for some criteria. So that's also something to keep in mind, I think. A big one, a very important one, don't be like me. High resolution is not necessary. In the local scale example I just presented you, I had used a 10 meter per 10 meter grid. That's a huge amount of cells. And the computer had to calculate a value based on multi-criteria formula for each of these cells. And of course, you always have to rerun your analysis several times because you make some adjustments. So every time it took 12 hours or something. The computer nearly died in the process, and you don't want that. So yeah, just don't look for too high resolution if it's not necessary. And yeah, finally, just remember that these analyses are used as a decision support. So sometimes the decisions won't match the red spots on the map, and that's okay. At least you've presented your information, and and that's how it should be used. So it's okay. And yeah, I think that's it for my presentation. I'm happy to take questions if there are any.
Thank you,
And
Marine.
perhaps we can have a look at the results of the Metimeter as well.
We can take a few questions, and I'm going to show the results. But for now, we only had 2 interactions in the Mentimeter.
Oh.
So I can share again my screen. Let me see, where is it? Share my screen. Up. All right, I'm going to share this one for now. If people didn't get the Mentimeter QR code, and we can take a few questions for Marine. If anybody has some questions, I guess you can type them in the chat, or I will open the microphones. How do I do this? Up, permettre de parler. So I don't know if you can actually lift your hand if you want to ask a question, then I can give you the microphone. It seems I can't give the microphones to everybody at the same time. That's weird. Yeah. Does anybody have any question for Marine? No. All right. I don't know how I can change the fact that you can all talk or not. That's weird. Yeah, everybody can actually talk. It's authorized now that I see it. Oh, there's a question. Who had a question? Nobody? All right, yes, uncertainty analysis. It's Chris. Chris, can you try to actually talk on your microphone? It should be open. Yeah. Is it working now? Chris, can you hear us? Okay, and now?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thanks. Good morning. Thanks, Marine. Very interesting presentation. Just asking about the uncertainty analysis of your work. Thank you.
Did you understand the question, Marine?
Not quite. I'm sorry.
Uh,
What would you like to know exactly?
Sorry, just can you still hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
cool. Yeah. Once you did your the project, how do you actually know the performance indicators, whether it was actually matching up? Were there any uh, other analyses that you could collaborate with that made it that your stakeholders could actually compare and say like, oh, okay, yeah, it actually is what is happening in these areas or something like that?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. So we did that at the indicators or at the criteria level. And then in the end, so for each for the distribution of the values of each criteria or indicators that we use in one or the other of our analysis, we interacted a lot with usually the data owners, because they are the one who understand better their data. And we made sure that we did put the thresholds at the right level. So very good or very bad, for example, match the reality. But we did not do an uncertainty analysis at the aggregated score level. And we had some feedback that some results were actually surprising. So in some cases, it might have been that we didn't have enough data, or perhaps the data, the weight that we put on some criteria were, not really matching the reality. But at the how can I say? Yeah, at the single data layer level, we did this uncertainty analysis by interacting with data owners and experts.
Thank you.
Good. Any other question? If not, I am sharing my screen with the results. I don't know if you can see them. So we had 9 answers from 4 people. And so the first one They're all different, so they all have only one each. So we have drinking water, farming communities, financement pour gestion, which means financing for the management, long-term criteria, so try to have a long-term project. Population, I understand population number that will be impacted by the project. Water quality of the resource, rural areas, and political synergy. So I hope it answers for you, Marine. We have some governance, we have some water resource, and we have the communities. So I think it's always the same criteria that are showing up most of the time.
Yeah, I think it's a good exercise to just realize that there are so many things to take into account, and yeah, and then you have to create a model by trying to pick some indicators in each of these things that you would like to take into account in your model. So it's a big process, and often you will have some challenges.
All right, we have another question for you, and I think it's going to be the last one. It's a question from Guillaume, and he says, you mentioned that ancient data is better than no data. Do you think it's possible in some cases that the very, very ancient data would introduce a bias because of major changes between the date of the data and now?
Yes. Yeah. So when I say ancient data, I mean, well, you still have to analyze, to estimate whether it's still relevant or not. If it's totally outdated, then it should be better not to use it, of course.
All righty. I think it's time for us to leave the floor to Lorraine. Thank you, Marine, for this great presentation. And if you have more questions for Marine, you can still write down in the chat, no problem. Lorraine, the floor is yours.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. And thank you, Marin. I learned a lot about New Caledonia today. We are going to be going into a different location in the Pacific. I'm going to be presenting on a program that was developed over the last 5 years. And the title of the project is Follow the Drop, a public-private philanthropic partnership for stormwater management. So specifically for the nature-based solutions that I'm going to be talking about today, we're going to be talking mostly about climate and stormwater management. And I'll be introducing a little bit about how we use not only GIS tools, but also the importance of these partnerships amongst different stakeholders to really narrow in and get projects successful on the ground. So if you're not familiar, Honolulu is on the island of Oahu. Honolulu is both a city, but it's also a county, which includes the entire island. So this particular project really was initiated back, oh gosh, it's hard to believe it's been a decade now, but it was formed under an initiative called the Hawaii Freshwater Initiative that basically a local foundation convened not only the water purveyors, but large landowners, Native Hawaiian leadership, as well as other important stakeholders to convene on talking about where Hawaii is in a quantitative way on its water supply, and where do we need to be by the year 2030, which is basically now tomorrow. And what happened is they came up with a document that set the goals and the framework for the state and for the counties and the cities to begin initiating projects that need to get implemented to meet these goals. So basically, the bottom line is, this is available online if anyone's interested, but we needed to meet increase water conservation, basically through different kinds of water efficiency fixtures and measures, double the volume of water reuse. We have recycled water available here on the island. And then importantly, this idea of groundwater recharge. So this is what I'm going to be talking about today, but how do we get, when it rains, to get that water back into the ground versus running off into our streams and oceans without having a chance to get in our aquifer. So a lot of that program then is about what we call green stormwater infrastructure here, mostly in the States. I know in different places in the world, this is called different things, but these are things like on small scale, like rain gardens, rainwater harvesting. It could be on larger scale, things like stormwater wetlands. The whole idea is to not only improve water quality, but get that water back into the ground, as well as preventing flooding and other kinds of ecological benefits that these nature-based solutions can bring. So from the Freshwater Initiative and in that green infrastructure strategy, one of the first projects that came out was basically we wanted to develop a mobile app and a tool that could become an educational model for starting off with kids, so that they can better understand what stormwater is, what nature-based solutions are available, and how can we really demystify the design and implementation of things like rain gardens and catchment and so forth. So a bunch of partners all came together. As you can see, we have not only NGOs, but governments as well as private sector, to begin looking at how we can build out this mobile app. And the whole idea, again, was to create a simple way to identify where projects could go, and also help in the sizing and ongoing tracking of those projects. So a whole curriculum was developed also around this program. And during that time, the city and county of Honolulu was also in the process of developing what's called a stormwater utility. And basically, they're trying to create a new utility based on the amount of impervious surfaces each property has. But importantly, in the meantime, they wanted to get more engagement around what private properties could do in terms of implementing green infrastructure on existing developments. And so they helped build out Follow the Drop over the last 5 years, and it's really become a much more robust tool to, again, kind of using professional design standards in the back end to act as, in essence, like a virtual engineer to help size and place green infrastructure practices. We've also bring in various types of rainfall data to not only predict the amount of stormwater that these practices could capture, but also provide alerts when storms are coming to estimate volumes that could be coming in. And importantly, all the data and metrics are helping them build out what the future green infrastructure master plan will be for the island. So as mentioned, the software includes a whole bunch of different types. When I say green stormwater infrastructure, these are the types of practices that it includes in the current version. And again, it helps with identifying, sizing, estimating volumes of stormwater capture, and importantly, linking people to existing incentives that are available. And importantly, the city, when they get the stormwater utility, although they'll be creating a fee based on the amount of impervious surface, they want to roll out immediately an incentive program. So this was also to begin testing how people would interact with the software to get linked to incentive programs, and in the hopes that in the future they can have not only a credit program on the bill, but also grants and rebates for these types of practices. And I had mentioned before, the software brings in several different types of rainfall data. We bring in the historical rainfall for any given geolocation, as well as forecast data. And then we also track in near real time actual volumes of, or using near real time rainfall data, we can actually track for the projects that are implemented, volumes that are being captured. So as a user, you can see not only how much volume your projects are doing, but you can also see the collective impact across the city for stormwater being captured. So here I want to get into the heart of this presentation, which is really with the city and 3R Water building out this software program, basically going into the community and seeing how partnerships can really help build out these kind of programs that really engage the public. And so a lot of what's happened since about 2020 has been working with a handful of nonprofit organizations across the island, mostly that are focused in watershed science and health, as well as those that are deeply engaged with their communities. And what has happened is they've allowed or started these programs that allow people to contact these nonprofits to basically get these free stormwater house calls, where again, people can utilize, they can either download Follow the Drop or have people help walk around their properties to identify where these practices could go in place. There's also been a lot of mapping of the island to try to identify priority locations for where stormwater capture could have the most impact. And I'll get into some of that in a second. And I also will detail out a little bit more about flow path mapping. So this is on a granular level of where implementing these practices might have the best impact in terms of reducing flood risk. And I'll get into that when we get there. And then, of course, building out, and not only using this as a planning tool, but then really being able to use additional funding from not only federal sources, but also local foundations to get these projects designed and implemented, as well as getting workforce development around these types of practices. So I'm going to take you into a specific example that is currently still ongoing, and it's working with a local nonprofit called Hawaii Green Growth. And this is basically the Alawai watershed, which is Honolulu's primary urban core. And if many of you aren't familiar with Waikiki, it's our primary economic engine. We have about 5 million visitors a year just in Waikiki alone. This area is roughly houses about 200,000 plus residents. It's very dense. It's about 15% of the state's population. So again, with all of this impervious area and urbanization, we have a lot of impacts of when storms come. And there's a particular, been a lot of focus on these larger rain bombs because models have been showing that Waikiki and other economic hubs will flood. And to begin taking the steps towards mitigating that problem has been ongoing for the last decade. So because this is a GIS-focused conversation, I do want to talk about how we utilized a program called Green Infrastructure for Towns that utilizes different types of GIS data to begin, again, trying to identify priority areas for green stormwater infrastructure retrofits across this area. So one of the things that that this program enabled us to do is going back to the data and data sources, we utilized mostly data that's available from our state of Hawaii, as well as by our city, and then some national level data sources as well. And those all have different timelines of how old those data sets are. The city's data set is usually pretty good within the last 5 years. So with ecosystem services in particular, we looked at this is again the boundary of the Alawai watershed, and looking at both property values as well as ecosystem service values that comes from a FEMA federal data source. We were able then to look at what kinds of adaptation strategies might be best based on the existing ecological services that are on this on a parcel scale versus what might need to be done in terms of identifying retrofit opportunities. So in the yellow, there's the preservation. So these are areas where there's already a lot of green spaces. These are most of those yellow areas, and these upper areas, for example, are forests. As we move down, like the enhance talks about higher property value that also does have some green spaces. So we want to enhance those. The mitigation is interesting because this looks at kind of, we don't really have that many inexpensive properties in Honolulu, but lower valued, maybe underutilized, but areas where maybe the city and or state agencies could come in and purchase these properties to look at larger stormwater parks and so forth. And then the retrofit is really the bulk of it. And that's where we have existing high impervious area, low green space. And where can we begin to retrofit green infrastructure to increase little pockets of sponges, if you will, across this watershed? Some other analysis was done, taking some of the data that the city had been collecting. It's called estimated mean concentration values. Based off of these types of nitrogen, phosphorus, and suspended solids. That's basically around different types of land cover. We were able to incorporate that with slope, soils, and impervious area to come up with these heat maps to begin trying to understand how much volume of pollutants are coming off different parcels. As again, a way to think about how to prioritize where we might want to look at putting in green stormwater infrastructure. And then we did some flood risk mapping. And again, most of these data sources are state data sources, but we also have things like FEMA, which is a flood risk insurance. It's a way in the states that they model out which properties will require flood insurance. But as well as importantly, as I can imagine in many of your locations, especially island locations, soil is highly variable in these areas. We have areas where it's clay, we have areas where it's sand, and we can look at data on a parcel level to see how well soils drain to, again, also understand flood risk. Elevation sinks as well. Lower elevation is going to be lower places or areas where flooding can occur. And so what was similar to what Maureen was talking about, we took all these data sets and then began a ranking process. So for example, where there's more impervious area, we looked at both 50% and 75% or greater coverage would get different rankings, for example. And so we did a ranking exercise with our city and county of Honolulu to look at how we would want to rank out this data set to get to this flood risk map. And then from there, we also continued this ranking exercise, and we took also an approach for, this is just one example, there's actually a whole report on this, but for example, let's just say we want to prioritize where we would want to maybe put rainwater harvesting. We looked at not only the red, which is that flood risk data, because in certain areas where there might be poor soil, we might want to be able to store that water versus trying to force water into the ground that's already going to be flooding. The other aspect was to think about rainwater harvesting in terms of as a drought mitigation or water conservation strategy. And this blue indicates sort of a sweet spot for rainwater harvesting, meaning it rains about 25 inches to 50 inches of rain. So that means people could harvest that water and have a use for it in terms of irrigation, which would be the primary use in these kind of existing developments. Above that, it's really, it just rains too much that there's no need for irrigation at any given time. So that was sort of an idea where we could try to really hone in on where prioritization could take place. The other thing that was looked at was this, the social vulnerability data set. So this is not only taking into account, basically income and age and other kinds of ways of social disadvantage communities to begin thinking about, should these areas also be prioritized, and do they does flood risk have a higher occurrence in some of these areas as well? So with that data set, Hawaii Green Growth then was able to essentially go in and start targeting out communities to do these free rainwater assessments, or basically have direct marketing. And I'm just showing you a picture here because this is really why we do this. This is our Alawai Canal following certain storm events. We have not only certain areas where it's flooding into Waikiki, this sits right behind Waikiki. Lots of pollution, lots of different things coming down. So this is really a way to address what I think the public also sees as the brown water effect coming from storms and how they can take part in being part of the solution. And so again, using door hangers and other ways to get direct marketing, they went out to these properties and can utilize Follow the Drop with the property owners. Follow the Drop has backend API set up. So we're able then to transfer the data sets into other GIS platforms. So as data gets collected with Follow the Drop, it can be migrated into other platforms. I'll come back to this in a second, but in Tintu, for example, they set up their own kind of dashboard system to begin showing like where projects have been identified, little heat maps, volumes of stormwater that these projects could be capturing, is a way to integrate the Follow the Drop data into a platform that could be shared with the public as well. So alongside the Follow the Drop work, there was additional funding to do what's called flow path mapping. And so this is looking both at elevation, soil, where existing storm sewer infrastructure exists, if it exists, and basically creates this stoplight map. And the stoplight map basically means that you can run it under different storm events. So in the red areas, for example, would be places where you may not want to put projects in, because if you were to put a project in here, it could actually cause more flooding. Whereas the green and yellow areas might be more beneficial for things like rain gardens, other types of projects to capture stormwater. So this was helpful to then share with the public so that they can also understand how stormwater is moving in and through their properties to, again, help identify where projects could go. And this is an old slide showing where this project was last year. But when it ended, or where it was in 2024 with the partnership with a federal grant to summarize the data. This is just some of the data that was collected and follow the drop. So over 3,000 projects were assessed. You know, you have basically with the potential of 350 acres of impervious area that could be removed. And again, stormwater calculated that are in the current condition, which is around 35 million gallons of stormwater runoff from just these identified projects. And with those projects, roughly almost half of that could be captured per year. And so this is the kind of metrics that have been enabling these projects to grow and get more funding and actually get these projects installed. And so I'm just going to end quickly with how that was able to leverage into this program. And this was a program that just completed or just closed their application process, but it was funded again by a local foundation through that Freshwater Initiative program. And it was in partnership with the city and county of Honolulu, a local nonprofit, and then with 3R Water with Follow the Drop. And in essence, it wanted to create an incentive program to test how many people would actually be wanting to implement these projects, because some of the issues that we ran some surveys during those free rainwater assessments, we found that it was not only a cost barrier, but it also was a barrier of people not knowing who to call to get these projects installed. So we wanted to take away those barriers and have a direct install program and target those who often get missed. So these would be those who may not be able to afford a rebate by putting the money up front, as well as the elderly and renters. And so the idea was they could apply either online or through Follow the Drop. And we got an amazing response just within 3 months. We had over 2,700 respondents. It was fantastic to track the demographics. We had people with all different types of income levels applying. Really what was fascinating was that people were really interested in rainwater harvesting in particular. And we had a very wide range of geographic locations as well. So currently what's happening is the filtering through all of these applicants, they were able, because of the wide demand, able to actually receive additional funding to get the program built out even further to get more projects installed. They're utilizing that the contractors that are going to be selected as a training to be able to go out and do the installs. And all of this is really in preparation for the city to launch that stormwater utility. So this will have a more sustainable funding stream in the future to keep the incentive program going and the community engagement as well. So I'll end there and see if there are any questions.
Perfect. Thank you, Lauren. Any questions for Lauren? Nope. You can put your hand up and I will open your microphone. It was really very interesting, actually, to see all this. Thank you, Lauren. Anybody for a question? It's too late already for everybody. Chris again. Go ahead, Chris. I think you can talk.
Thanks, Lauren. I just wanted to know what softwares you used for the flow path tracking. Did you use the particle tracking ones? Thanks.
That was actually done by a consultant called Hay and Associates. Sorry, should have been on the slide. They utilize GIS Esri data sets. I don't know the specifics on their analysis, except that I know that they used the DEM, and I know that they use the soil drainage capacity. I know that they use the city storm drain network. And I'm trying to think what else. I think those are the primary ones that they utilize. And so I'm not sure how they assess that data in particular, but it is open source data that they have a program analysis to come out with those maps. So I know that's not a great answer, but it's their own software, their own, I guess, proprietary methodology, if you will.
Thank you.
I'm sure that if we want more information about this, you can definitely give us the name to the person in charge and we can ask directly anyway. Anybody else for a question? Thank you, Chris, for the question. If not, then I'm going to share my screen again for the last 3 minutes. If you have any questions, just type them in the chat. Let me see. Share my screen. Where is it? It's the one here. Share. All right. All right. So I wanted to do another interaction, but now as I see the time, we will pass it. I just wanted to share with you a few more articles about nature-based solution for watershed management. With the first one is just actually showing us that it's best if you combine different types of nature-based solution techniques more to have better performance, sorry. And the second one is actually giving some KPIs list if you want to make sure that you can have an evaluation of your work from the start and from the end, just like Lauren has been showing us with all the dots. This is a good decision aid to make sure that the politics are with us in the project. I will share the slides on the thank you email, so you will have them. Just to let you know, we have been presenting you, thanks to Chris, actually, the fact that we want to create an Oceania Regional Committee into the International Association on Hydrological Science, EAHS. And so you can actually get you can review the blueprint draft proposition before May. So that's the same. I'm going to share the link in the chat and in the thank you email in the coming days. Just to let you know what's next. So next month, May 28th, on the Wednesday, still at 9 a.m. Fiji time, we will have the technical webinar number 6 around water and artificial intelligence for the Pacific Islands. And on Wednesday, June 11th, we will try something new for us. It's an online training workshop. So right now, the time and the content are not completely defined, but it will be the same around GIS and artificial intelligence to try to find some tools. We have already one expert that is ready to share about water quality and artificial intelligence. You have the other ones now. I'm not going to go through it. We are available on YouTube. We are available on this website, but I will share everything in the chat. And the big thing is to you can find us on the LinkedIn group. The same. I will give you everything in the chat for now. I have seen that there are a few questions, so let me see if our ladies have a few more minutes. I need to stop this. I think somebody raised the hand. No, it's in the chat. What is in the chat? So Lauren, you've been talking. Okay, so you've been answering in the chat already. You're too fast. All right. Well, I think this is it. Thank you, Marine, and thank you, Lauren, to be speakers with us today. I do hope all of you liked this webinar, and we will give you, the meeting is May 28th for the next webinar around water and artificial intelligence. You all have a good day. Thank you so much for your participation today.